What if your chronic pain and symptoms aren't physical, but a part of your spiritual path? A lesson that you need to learn in this school of life we're on here on earth. I understand the frustration of pain and symptoms, particularly when you've tried everything. And in this video, we are going to explore more about how self-compassion, kindness, mindfulness, and spiritual practice can help soothe your nervous system and rewire your brain for healing. TMS, or neuroplastic pain, is when your body creates real physical symptoms and pain in response to stress, emotions, and inner conflict. It's not all in your head, but it is learned, which is good because it means it can be unlearned. The key to healing isn't fixing our body, but changing our mindset and the way we relate to ourselves and our body and our thoughts. Once our brain stops seeing pain as protective, it can begin to let it go. As you'll know if you've already done some work in the TMS space, that the brain needs to feel safe and that a danger signal, an incorrect danger signal, has been triggered causing pain and symptoms. And the more we fixate and focus on these symptoms and get fearful about them, usually the worse they get. However, tapping into our spiritual side and doing some spiritual practice can be a safety signal that can help calm down our mind and our nervous system. And what I'd like you to consider while you're watching this video is, what if your pain and symptoms are here to teach you a deeper spiritual lesson? In TMS circles, we talk a lot about our symptoms and our pain as messages from the body trying to get our attention and to look at perhaps our repressed emotions. But what if our soul is trying to speak to us and ask us some deeper questions like, hey, are you on purpose or on track? Or are you making the best choices for yourself and for your soul's evolution and growth? So what I'm talking about today is just taking that common TMS theory a little bit deeper from, are we repressing emotions, and asking ourselves that question if perhaps we're shutting down or repressing something more spiritual, that inner voice or that deeper, higher part of ourselves that has a message for us too. What prompted me to do this video today was a recent podcast I listened to where Howard Schubiner was talking. I'm actually not sure which podcast it was on. I went back and tried to find it, but I can't. But what he was saying was, an important part in our healing is, if it feels right, to ask our higher self what message our pain or our symptoms have for us. And that got me thinking a lot about how spirituality has helped me in my journey, and it has helped me a lot in many different ways. So I'm going to talk through some of those things that have helped me and some of my clients today. It's important to know that you don't have to be spiritual or religious to tap into that spiritual part of you and ask questions of your higher self and to get advice from your higher self, that higher part of you. So if you're somebody who is in the beginning parts of your spiritual journey, or you haven't used spiritual work as part of your TMS healing before, as part of your TMS healing to date, this could be something as simple as lighting a candle when you do your journaling and taking a moment to breathe and reflect and ask your higher self, or perhaps you might prefer to call it your wise mind, if it has any messages for you about your pain or symptoms, or more broadly just about what you're experiencing in the moment that might be impacting your life. I think it's important to, and people certainly often ask me about, how do I know if it's my wise mind talking, or if it's my higher self talking, or if it's just my logical mind? And one of my common rules of thumb is that the higher self or the wise mind doesn't use a lot of words. Usually the words, or advice for me at least, come in fairly short sentences, or it might even be an image in your mind that we can of course do more work on and explore, but the messages from the higher self or the wise mind are usually short and understandable, and something that you can certainly work with, but it probably isn't going to be reams and reams of thoughts or a large amount of information. For people who are already using spiritual practice and doing spiritual rituals, embedding this more in the TMS work might look like, on top of your journaling, using gratitude lists. And if you're experienced with gratitude lists or you've read a bit about them, you'll probably know that we don't always have to be grateful just for the great things in life. We can also find gratitude for the things that are more difficult and the lessons we're learning and the way we're growing in response to those things in our lives. And that can include pain and symptoms. Of course, they're not things that we want. We often look back, and also there's a lot of talk about post-traumatic growth, and see the lesson and the learning and the growth that we've had by going through difficult experiences in our life. Also, another spiritual practice that you might like to include, and I really like this one as you're going off to sleep, is just visualizing yourself healing and visualizing yourself surrounded by healing light and being supported by whatever you see as the divine. Another thing I think is really important for anyone, whether you're experienced in spiritual work or not, is speaking to yourself and your pain and your symptoms with reverence. I've spoken about how much I love the work of Tara Brach before, and she says really simple things, and one of my favourites is, "It's okay, sweetheart." And just being able to say that to yourself, like placing your hand on the part of the body that hurts and saying, "It's okay, sweetheart," or whatever endearment that you prefer, but just bringing in that gentleness and that softness, almost the way you would speak to a child or somebody else who is in pain, and giving yourself that kindness and that care and that gentleness and softness. Now, as many of you will know, journaling is a really important part of TMS healing, and most people who work on their TMS healing will do journaling at some point, whether it's something they do for a short period of time or an ongoing thing. And certainly for me, it is an ongoing thing that I use in different ways. I don't do it every day. I'm more likely now to do it when I need it, but also do it as part of my spiritual practice. So when it is part of my spiritual practice, I might light some candles, turn off all the lights, make sure that I'm not going to be disturbed. I might hold on to my favorite crystal and get down to doing a big bunch of journaling with quite a few prompts and spending a lot of time on it. And I find that's a great way to continue doing the work and make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. So things that do come up that might have been under my radar a little bit, that when I sit down and journal, I've got the opportunity to work through those things. The other type of journaling that I also love and probably do more often these days is what you could call messy journaling, where something happens and you get whatever you can to write on. So that might be a piece of paper, a post-it note into your iPhone, or I always carry a notebook in my handbag where something happens and you think the best thing for me to do right now is write about it. Even if you can't spend a lot of time on it, just writing a few things down, writing in code, whatever you need to do, and throwing that out afterwards, because it's probably something that you wouldn't want other people to see. It's best thrown out or deleted from your iPhone. However, I find this type of journaling just as impactful as the more still, sacred, planned journaling that I do. Also, you'll probably know, if you've heard me talk about journaling and TMS practice before, you'll also have heard me say the importance of giving yourself self-compassion after doing things like journaling. And for me, my favorite and easiest thing to do that you can really do anywhere, no one really notices that you're doing it, is just pressing or rubbing a little bit under my collarbone and giving myself those words of kindness and safety. It might be, "It's okay, sweetheart," or "Well done for doing the work," something that's soothing or calming. But just recognizing that you've done some work and that you deserve a little well done for it and a little bit of self-compassion, because this stuff isn't always easy, but it's effective and it's important. The next practice that I consider spiritual, but many would just consider a part of daily life and nothing too divine or spiritual, is mindfulness. And mindfulness means many things to many people, but what I mean when I talk about mindfulness is being present, noticing what's happening in the moment. So not trying to get rid of thoughts or change things or change how things are in the moment, but tapping into your senses and being aware of what is about you, but also what's within you. And of course, with chronic pain and symptoms, what is within is sometimes pain and symptoms, and taking that mindful pause to not resist them or try and make them go away, but perhaps notice if you've got pain in the lower back, doing almost like a mini somatic tracking where you sort of go, "Oh yeah, I feel it," and then using a more neutral term to describe it. So it feels like I'm getting a hard massage there in my lower back. Or if it's a pain in your tummy, it might feel like you might describe it as fullness. So you might go, "Oh, okay, there's fullness. I'm noticing fullness." So taking a moment to just do a mini mindfulness activity, which can be formal and done in a quiet space, or it can be really done anywhere, such as when you're stopped at traffic lights, when you're out walking, or even when you're in a meeting, which I find a great time to tap into mindfulness, because most of us, when we're in meetings, there'll be times when we're not fully engaged with what is being discussed perhaps, but it's a really good time to tap into our body, to notice how we feel, where we're sitting, notice our body and just tap in a little bit I like to, in moments like that, just if I have got some discomfort or pain, just breathing in and around that sensation and giving it that feeling of safety. And I find that's a way to work smarter, not harder. Even with spirituality, you can do that. I find something that often gets in the way of TMS healing with my clients is timing. People with the desperate need for things to happen quicker, or believing that if their pain or symptoms haven't healed within a certain time frame, then it's not working, the TMS work isn't working, or perhaps I don't have TMS or neuroplastic pain at all. And I find that the question of when is often not helpful in life, but is often not helpful in life more generally, but also particularly with neuroplastic pain and symptoms, because we all heal at different rates. And I think most of us know that healing isn't linear, and sometimes we're feeling great and that might happen for a week, and then we might have a day where we don't feel so great and then we feel good again, or the pain might move to a different spot. So healing doesn't go in a straight line, and it doesn't usually, for most of us, disappear overnight. So letting go a little bit and being more open and okay with timing, I see as a spiritual practice and a spiritual lesson that many of us are here to learn. And in my life, I've been told many times that I need to be more patient. And I don't want to be patient. I'm not naturally a patient person. However, I do understand that it is a life lesson for me. And the more I try and practice and cultivate patience and remind myself that things happen in divine timing rather than on my timeline, the more relaxed I can be about that feeling that is naturally a little bit impatient within me. And again, also with mindfulness, is being able to bring in that aspect of mindfulness and saying, yeah, I am feeling impatient, like there's impatience. But in doing so, at least I'm seeing it and not just getting frustrated and wanting things to happen faster or on my timeline. I'm actually allowing a little bit and saying, there's impatience. I don't need impatience to go away, but by noticing it, at least somewhat, I've dropped the struggle with it. Another thing that tends to be reasonably common when people are healing from neuroplastic pain or TMS is relapse. And relapse can be really scary, but again, to me, it has to do with timing, and perhaps that there's a little bit more of a lesson that we need to learn. There's a little bit more that we can do to help process our pain, be more mindful, recognize what's happening inside of our mind that perhaps is bringing our symptoms up again. So I see each relapse as an opportunity to learn more. I understand it's frustrating. Nobody wants the pain to come back, and it's not pleasant, it's not fun. However, again, if we can just reframe it sometimes and see it as another opportunity to learn and grow and use our tools, then it just softens the blow a little bit of our pain and symptoms returning. Another thing that I find really important in this space of TMS and neuroplastic pain healing is metaphysics and theories around where we have pain in our body and how that might relate to what we're going through in our lives, perhaps the issues we're grappling with or the emotions we're repressing. And some of my favourite spiritual teachers who get into this space of metaphysical healing also are Caroline Myss, Louise Hay, and Yvette Rose. And I remember hearing many, many years ago, before I understood anything about TMS and neuroplastic pain, Caroline Myss's theory about where we experience pain and symptoms in our body and how that relates spiritually or how that relates to our chakra systems. And I remember back then Caroline talking about lower back pain and how when we have lower back pain, we might like to look at where we're not feeling supported in life, or where we might be concerned about money or security, or even where we're carrying emotional weight in relation to the family or our past. And hearing it back now and considering it now, it sounds very much like neuroplastic pain, as you will hear. And these theories have been around for a really long time. It was a very long time ago that I listened to Caroline's lecture about this work. But TMS has brought that understanding of what's really happening, personality types, and ways of healing these things also, which has open things up so much for people who might be experiencing TMS and neuroplastic pain, because now there's a path, not just of understanding the symptoms and what might be driving them, but some real tools as to how you can work with your mind and body to begin to heal those things. Digestive issues are another thing experienced by many people who have TMS or neuroplastic pain. And the metaphysical space have a lot to say about digestive issues and what might be leading to different types of digestive issues. For example, with IBS, it's often said that this is related to hypervigilance, perfectionism, and repressed anxiety. Whereas bloating is said to be more about holding on to emotions and unresolved fear and anger, while heartburn is said to be about burning emotions that have been unexpressed. So again, really common themes to what we talk about in the TMS space, but just a more spiritual and metaphysical take on it. And again, things that we can now understand and see ourselves in that and say, yeah, I do have bloating, and I notice that I get bloating now when I'm not expressing my emotions, or something has happened and I haven't had an opportunity to work through it, or I didn't realize that it upset me so much, but now the bloating is actually telling me that perhaps that thing that happened earlier today is really upsetting me, and I would have liked to have said something and I didn't, so perhaps I'll get my journal out and do some sacred journaling and taking that real time to work through it, or just doing some messy journaling on the way home on the train if you must, if that's the only opportunity you've got. But it all helps to work through processing our emotions and recognizing what we're experiencing. So in closing, I encourage you to approach your symptoms and pain and even your fears around what you're experiencing with reverence and softness and self-kindness and care. And just remembering that even though TMS and having chronic pain and symptoms is difficult, that it is also presenting an opportunity for us to learn more about ourselves, to grow, and to treat ourselves with more care and compassion. So this week I encourage you to do some journaling. If you already journal, it will just be adding a question, but if you don't journal very often, it will be sitting down and doing some journaling and just perhaps asking yourself what your higher self or your wise mind would like to tell you about your pain and symptoms, or what you're going through at the moment, and take some time to just write a little bit. It might just be a couple of words, it might be a sentence, it might be an image, but just taking that time to tap in spiritually with care and compassion for yourself. So I'd love to hear in the comments if you use spiritual practice and it has helped you with your TMS healing journey. Also, if you are going to use the prompts to journal this week, I would love to hear about that too. Also, I'd love it if you could like my video and subscribe, because it helps more people see my content. And I hope to see you again soon.